And then last but not least is our kindergarten through 12th grade education system. While there are many fine public schools in California, and maybe some of your children or grandchildren go to them, the vast majority are not doing the job. And we once and for all have to tackle this, because if we don't, we will end up jeopardizing the innovation engine that keeps California alive. We will end up with a second-rate workforce in ultimately a second-rate state. So I want to make sure that we once and for all tackle that education system. So let's talk a little bit more specifically about how we're going to do that. I think what we need to do is strive to create 2 million jobs over the next 4 to 5 years. That's the number that's going to be required to bring back California's unemployment rate back down to 4.5 or 4.6%. That is a tall order. But here's what I think we've got to do. First is we've got to do targeted tax relief. While I am in favor, longer term, of a broad-based tax cut, we simply cannot afford a broad-based tax cut right now, not facing a $20 billion budget deficit. So if you really believe that jobs is the thing that you should really focus on, everything has to be viewed through one lens. Does it create jobs in California? Does it keep jobs in California? Then let's do targeted tax relief that leads to job creation as fast as possible. So for example, let's eliminate the factory tax in California. I don't know how many of you know, but we're one of only 3 states in the entire United States that actually requires manufacturers to pay sales tax on the equipment they buy to manufacture in California. So if you're a manufacturer, and we have a lot of manufacturers here, it's a good reason to go to Nevada or Arizona. How about we target tax incentives that will help agriculture get back on its feet? Let's accelerate the depreciation schedule that allows the investment in tractors and farm equipment to be depreciated faster. Let's eliminate the small business startup tax. So this is fascinating. If you want to start a new business in California, and I run into people every day who dream of starting their own small business, you know what the very first hurdle you face is? You've got to pay an $800 fee to set up an LLC. That's a pretty big stop sign in the way of new businesses, because you don't know how soon you'll be profitable. You don't know how soon you can make that $800 back. So let's have targeted tax relief that as closely as we can leads to hiring. Because I promise you, unless we turn this unemployment rate around, there is no way out of this mess. The only sustainable way to increase revenues in the state of California is to put more people back to work. The second thing we've got to do is get our arms around regulation. Regulation is strangling businesses of all sizes in this state. You know, as I've traveled all over California, and I've had the privilege of going to virtually every part of California, I get an earful on taxes, but actually most business people tell me, if you could only tackle one thing, tackle the regulatory morass. So what I've called for is, on my first day in office, I want to put a moratorium on all new regulations. Stop the madness, stop the music, and let's take stock of what we have here. Let's see, thank you. Let's see if we can't streamline regulation, if we can't stop the overlapping jurisdictions of regulations. You know, I was down on the Central Coast the other day with Mark Teixeira, Teixeira Farms. Many of you may know Mark. He is one of the largest producers of broccoli and celery in the state. And he said, man, my water board is telling me I have to recycle all the water on my farm. And another law out of Sacramento is telling me I can't recycle any of the water. So you guys can tell me what you want me to do, but I can't recycle all the water and recycle none of the water all at the same time. The other thing that I think we need to do is, once we streamline these regulations, then I want to make sure we're really doing the right thing in terms of a number of these new regulations. And many of you may know that I have called for a 1-year moratorium on the implementation of AB 32. And I care a lot about the environment. In fact, I know everyone in this room cares a lot about the environment. But this is, I think, taking a meat axe to our job situation in California. This is going to drive businesses outside the state. I hear it every single day. And the law was put into place when we had a 4.5% unemployment rate, not a 12.4% unemployment rate. So let's look at this, make sure we understand the unintended consequences. And I am persuaded by much of the academic work that has been done on this that says we could lose another 1 million jobs to neighboring states. And the reason is they have nothing like this regulation. You know, I think of Oregon as a pretty green state. Oregon has nothing like AB 32. So let's take a pause on this and make sure that we understand fully the law of unintended consequences. I also want to look at making sure that we don't let workman's compensation get out of hand again. Governor Schwarzenegger did a marvelous job of getting our workman's compensation rates down to be competitive. They're starting to inch up again, and we have to make sure that does not happen. I also want to look carefully at our labor laws and our workplace flexibility laws. This is another place where California is just not competitive. And I've spent a number of hours with the California Restaurant Association, the Hospitality Association, and these labor laws are killing these businesses. I don't know if you knew, probably everyone in this room does, but of course you have to pay overtime if someone works more than 40 hours. In California, we're one of the only states that if you work more than 8 hours a day for 40 hours, you still have to pay overtime. So let's say you worked 4 days at 10 hours a day. Actually, you would have to pay overtime as the employer. And this is just the wrong thing. Think about one example would be family flexibility. Many working women that I know would love to work 4 days a week for 10 hours a day so they could have Friday, Saturday, Sunday with their family. In California, there's no economic incentive for employers to do that. The meal and rest periods are just killing our small businesses. And then last but not least is the lawsuit abuse that goes on in this state. We were just rated 48th out of 50 states, I think, by a legal magazine about the sort of the situation with lawsuit abuse. We have got to fix this. I hear the frivolous lawsuits every single day talking about how how businesses are being hurt by this. So we've got to once and for all tackle lawsuit abuse. And interestingly, we're the state where in the medical profession we've done a good job on this. There is a maximum malpractice liability in California of about $250,000, better than any other state in the union. And yet every other kind of lawsuit is a huge challenge here. So first is jobs. Let's create 2 million jobs by getting this right. Oh, the last thing I would say is, you know what? We're going to have to stand up and compete for jobs. As I said, we're losing jobs to neighboring states. So we have got to put together an economic development team. We haven't had an economic development team in California since Pete Wilson. And we're going to have to start burning up the phone wires to companies to bring them back to California. And I think I can do that very well. I'm a business person, and trust me, I'll be calling companies to get them back to California. And at a very minimum, not losing any other big ones. My heart broke the other day when I read that Northrop Grumman, the last aerospace company in Long Beach, left for Virginia. It didn't leave for India or China, it left for Virginia. And think about it, aerospace is a signature industry for California. And so we just can't let that happen. Let's talk about spending for a moment. As I said, we have a spending problem of epic proportions. And I think we can take $15 billion out of the current budget and actually not cut any services. Let's just do this more effectively. And I'll give you a couple of ideas. First is pension reform. We have an enormous problem headed down the turnpike towards us as Californians. We have anywhere between a 60 to 100 billion unfunded pension liability. This we're going to have to change. My view is new civil servants have to come in under a different deal. We simply cannot afford to pay people to retire at 55 years old with 85% of their salary and 100% of their health care benefits till the day they die. It's bankrupting cities, it's bankrupting counties, and it will bankrupt California. The next thing we've got to do is shrink the number of employees who work for the state of California. So today, we have 357,000 people who work for the state. And this year we'll have about $85 billion in the general fund. And I said, that's down from $100 billion just 18 months ago. But I asked the first question, which everyone in this room would ask, which is, when was the last time we had revenues of $85 billion? Turns out, just 5 years ago. And then I asked the next question, which was, and how many people did we have working for the state just 5 years ago? 40,000 fewer. And this is not frontline employees and firefighters and police. This is the bureaucracy. And so we have got to get this down to a manageable number. The true fact is we have a government we can no longer afford. So through attrition, 10 to 12,000 civil servants retire.